Welcome to Fuse Logic TV. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. Our shows are coming to you from the White Mud Equine Center. We are here for the Alberta Council of Technology's event called Twilight in the Meadows. We'll be interviewing a number of people. Let's get started. Joining us right now, we've got author Todd Hirsch. Todd, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Your book is The Boiling Frog Dilemma. It's not a culinary treat, is it?
No
that's
frogs
not what we're talking
were
about
harmed
here.
in the making of this book at all.
Fair enough. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Well, the book is really trying to answer one question, and that is what creates wealth in the economy? And my co-author and I, we argue it's not hydrocarbon molecules in the ground that create wealth. It's not an auto assembly factory in Oshawa that creates wealth. What creates wealth is the power of a great idea and creative ideas. And fortunately, the power of creativity is unlimited in the human mind. So if Canada wants to continue to prosper into the 21st century, we've got some heavy work to do in terms of increasing our creativity and innovation.
I mean, that's what this group ABCtech is all about,
Absolutely.
obviously, new technology and spreading the word. So are we lagging? I mean, you say we've got some heavy lifting, so that would imply to me that we're lagging behind.
Well, we can find all kinds of really great shining examples here in Alberta and across the country of fantastic design and interesting technologies. So we don't want to make it sound like there's none of this happening, but we do need to up the game because the global economy is changing very rapidly. Canada is at risk of falling behind, on a more permanent basis, if in fact we don't put more emphasis on the creative technologies.
So we consider ourselves a developed country, which we are. We consider ourselves forward thinking. Are we not grasping the idea of new technology and where the world is going? Quite like, are we a little bit more conservative and as opposed to forward thinking? A
little more conservative, a little bit too risk taking. And I have to be careful when I say that because we're not advocating people make reckless decisions. That's especially financial ones. That's not it at all. And when you look at Canada's banking system, in fact, it was our conservative policies that kind of saved our hide. What we're talking about is understanding the risk in any sort of business entrepreneur endeavor, but not letting that risk paralyze you into inaction. And sometimes we see that happening in Canada. Sometimes we see entrepreneurs or businesses, they look at something, they assess some risk, and then they back away from it. And that's exactly what you can't do. Otherwise, your economy is going to, in the long run, your economy is going to falter.
Is that a Canadian thing? The other week we were at the Global Petroleum Show in Calgary and getting a chance to talk to Americans and Canadians in the petroleum industry, just asking them what the difference is in dealing with each country. And they go, in Canada, we're deliberate, we think things through, whereas in the States, they're more aggressive and I guess more of a headlong sort of way of doing things. Everything has to happen fast down there.
Yeah.
Whereas here, we seem to take our time.
It is funny. I think there is something sort of in their collective DNA in the U.S. Around that risk-taking.
And the competitiveness.
And the competitiveness. Yeah. That's kind of what their economy and the whole psyche of the country is sort of built on. And I think that's why in the long run the U.S. will do well. I mean, they're in a bit of trouble right now, but in the longer run the U.S. is always going to do well. And I think Canada, it's not that we have to emulate the U.S. and become more American. That's not it at all. But we do have to understand if you let risk paralyze you, you're going to be left behind. That's all there's to it.
You're talking about risk. I mean, you've got to have an idea, obviously, before risk even factors into this. Yeah. Are the ideas in this country?
Oh, I think we have all kinds of great ideas. One thing that we're not as good at doing is sharing these ideas. We've got a whole chapter in the book around collaboration and community. An idea, any individual on his or her own with an idea, that idea probably won't go anywhere, even though the idea is there. What we need to do is rub these ideas together. We need to be in collaboration. We need to be discussing and debating and talking about our ideas. And you tell me your idea and I'll tell you mine, and together we'll come up with something that's greater than the sum of these two ideas.
Well, see, and that's what ABCtech is about, obviously, networking and sharing ideas.
Yeah.
Is that sort of a global shift that's going on right now? Because at one time, everything was proprietary. You didn't let your secret out of the bag. But now, is it because the world is so different now with technology and looking things up and things making it into the public domain, I guess, that sharing is almost smarter and easier than it is to try and protect everything yourself?
It might be moving in that direction, but I think there's still a lot of the blue chip companies globally that are still very proprietary. Companies like Google and 3M, this is why they design their campuses, because they're all about sharing ideas. They don't want to be all secretive about it. But I think they're still the exceptions. They're the ones that will do well in the long run. But I don't know if overall, globally, we are seeing more of this collaboration or not.
Okay. You mentioned during your keynote a short time ago, and I kind of got it, it's where I walked in and I thought, why is a keynote speaker talking about toilet brushes? And perhaps you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, the
Or I
example,
guess even tell us what it was about. Yeah.
the example I was using was if you look at an ordinary toilet brush, it's assembled in China in lower cost country, and it sells in Canada for about $7.99. But if you look at a toilet brush maybe designed by Elise, a French design company, those toilet brushes sell for $40. The difference is it's the same amount of plastic and metal, same amount of value in the manufacturing. The difference in price is the design aspect to it. And I think sometimes we overlook that step, the value in great design. And Canada, we have every possible opportunity to be at the high end of that design stage. Toilet brushes might not be our thing. I just use it as an example. But if we're looking to be adding value, where does Canada fit on the value-added chain? We think we need to be at the very top, not in the manufacturing sector, and I think we limit ourselves sometimes if we only try to attract secondary manufacturing. We do ourselves better by trying to be at the very top, the design, the technologists, the engineers of the world.
Okay, you wrapped up your session with 4 key points, and we can just touch on them here. One, chasing the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
It is a worthwhile endeavor. Explain that.
Well, diversification in Alberta, this has been the Holy Grail. We chase it, and it always just is outside of our grasp a little bit. It's worthwhile trying to constantly be diversifying the province and the economy, but we have to understand that is not an easy process, nor is it going to come automatically. There's not going to be a silver bullet. If we can just get this policy or that tax cut, then we'll be diversified. It won't happen that way. I think it's a good goal to move towards, but it is going to be a battle.
Do you think it's also easy to just slip right back into oil is our thing, that's what we're good at?
Especially when prices are high. There's less talk about diversity when energy prices and the energy sector is doing well. It's when the energy sector sort of falters like it did in '09. Then we start wringing our hands and, gee, we need to be more diversified.
And of course, when we've got the money, we say we won't blow it this time.
Yeah,
it's
we
a
promise.
cycle that keeps going over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
So that covers your 2 of the 4 points. The other one, you have government efforts are ineffective.
And it's not that they're wrong-headed or, ill-spirited. They're in the right direction. They just have not been overwhelmingly successful. You look at diversification policies and programs, federal and provincial, back to the 1960s. None of them have really given us exactly what they've intended to do, which is more diversified.
Government officials aren't experts in these areas?
That's a lot of it.
Yeah,
that's a lot of it. I think also they set up some pretty lofty goals that a policy alone is not going to bring about. So again, it's going after that Holy Grail. They've all failed at bringing home the Grail.
Okay, and your last one was non-market sectors are worth it. Explain that to us.
Especially in Alberta, I think one area, if we're looking at some low-hanging fruit, one area where we can diversify the economy purposely is in healthcare and education. In Canada, those 2 things we tend to call non-market sectors.
Okay.
There are some possibilities, if you open it up to, say, for example, foreign students coming to live and study at Alberta universities. Then there is a market aspect to it. But by and large, the market itself does not fill the niches of healthcare delivery and education in Alberta. But those 2 things can be very, very important to drivers of the economy if we do it properly, if we invest in it properly. And that's separate from the energy industry. So there is some diversity.
So you're talking about coming up with ideas that can help, I guess, improve the effectiveness of those 2 areas.
Absolutely.
And by non-market, it's because it's a public sector?
It's a public sector and publicly funded, generally.
Right, okay. Well, we've got another health study going on here in Alberta. It's just starting off. Maybe they'll come up with something this time.
Maybe they will.
You never know. That seems to be a good money generator. Every couple of years do a health
Have
study.
another government study, yeah.
Do you think, is government getting in the way, do you think?
Of diversification?
Yeah, diversification, new technology, getting out there and grasping what's available.
I don't know if they get in the way, but I think sometimes they set up some expectations that, no fault of their own, but they're not going to meet that. So if you set up these expectations and, the electorate, they now expect the government to deliver on this, and it's not going to happen. At least it's not going to happen as much as they promote. it can sort of be a distraction.
I had an entrepreneur telling me the other day that he thinks that this is the best time to get out there and do it on your own. There's so many resources available to you. You can do so much from your own home. He just thought that if you worked hard and you had a good idea, you can make something happen today. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with it, but it's still an awful lot of work. I totally agree that you can make things happen, but you are going to run into a lot of brick walls along the way. Maybe brick walls that in some cases government could help reduce or eliminate. In other cases, it might not be a government-related thing at all. But they have to expect that there are going to be some challenges.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Todd.
You're very welcome.
All right,
Thanks for having me.
We've been chatting with Todd Hirsch, author of The Boiling Frog Dilemma, which you said can be picked up in Edmonton at Audrey's and Greenwoods.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.